Okay, good evening, everyone. We're going to start. It's now 6:03. We're going to start with those who we have, and the others will join in later, I guess. Okay, so tonight is a review class, but I need to do review homework number 5. So I'm going to go over but I'll just say what the answers are. Actually, two of the questions dealt with the pricing, and someone sent me saying that they wanted to go over how to do the pricing, those two spreadsheets. And so I won't go over them during the homework because those two will come up when I get to that section in the actual review. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll do the review of homework number 5, then we'll do a quick review through Martin and Sherry Roll and Hezekiah and Lottie Balfour. Those are the two main ones that we looked at. There was another one, but it's pretty similar to the two of them. It's like a blend between the two of them. So we'll just look at Martin and Sherry Roll and Hezekiah and Balfour, Lottie Balfour as the case studies. Then we'll do some quick chapter reviews. Then we'll look at some typical final exam questions. And then we'll end with some exam tips and information. Now, in going through the review, because there's a lot of work to cover tonight, because we're covering about 10 chapters. So I'm going to move through it quickly, but if you have a question, please stop me and we'll discuss or go over as the case may be, whatever the query may be, or if you need to get a full understanding of something. Okay, so here are the answers to homework number 5, the true and false section. 1 is A, 2 is A, 3 is B, 4 is B, 5 is A, 6 is B, 7 is A, 8 is B, 9 is A. So again, I'll go over section 1 again, because I see someone just was admitted.
Good afternoon.
Good evening. Okay. So so section 1 of homework number 5, again, the answers are 1 is A, 2 is A, 3 is B, 4 is B, 5 is A, 6 is B, 7 is A, 8 is B, 9 is A. Okay.
Hello, Mr. Modich. You were just going in. I'm just joining. I'm sorry. You were going along very quickly.
Yeah, I was just going, we just started and I'm just going through questions A. Section 1,
Okay.
true and false. You need me to go through those again?
Please. Thank you so much.
Okay. Sorry? Okay, really better send it now. Is it fast? So, one of the information change, like email address changes. At least for me. Okay. So I was just doing some housekeeping stuff here in class. So so I'm looking at homework number 5. I'll go over the answers again. For those who's just joining in class and online. So question number 1, again, is A. 2 is A. 3 is B. 4 is B. 5 is A. 6 is B. 7 is A. 8 is B. 9 is A. Okay. Now we move to section 2, multiple choice. One is A. 2 is A. 3 is C. 4 is B as in boy. 5 is A. 6 is D as in dog. 7 is B as in boy. 8 is A. 9 is A. 10 is C. 11 is E as in elephant. Okay, so I'll go over those again. Section 2, multiple choice. Question 1 is A. 2 is A. 3 is C. 4 is B. 5 is A. 6 is D. 7 is B. 8 is A. 9 is A. 10 is C. 11 is E. Okay. And now for the final section, section 3, fill in the blank. 1 is income capitalization. 1 is income capitalization. 2 is replacement value. 2 is replacement value. 3 is secondary. 3 is secondary. 4 is promissory note. 4 is promissory note. And 5 is liquid assets. Liquid assets. I think one person had in their fixed assets, but they may not have been to class or reviewed the PowerPoint presentation sent after the class, where fixed asset was changed to liquid assets. So it's liquid assets, not fixed assets. Okay. Any questions? Because we're going to move, like I said, there's quite a bit to cover tonight. So I'm going to move kind of quickly on to the first of the 2 case studies that we did in full, or at least the 2 that we will look at. One is the class 1, Martin and Sherry rule. That'll be the first one we'll look at. And then the second one will be the Balfours. Okay. So those of you who have, well, everyone should have have that in their workbooks, and you can open up your spreadsheet that you did during the class. Okay, so here's what we're going to look at. We're going to complete the network statement. We're going to complete the TDSR spreadsheet. We're going to look at the current mortgage LPV, the current equity. We'll answer whether we grant a loan, yes or no, and we will support our answer using either Compari or Credit Cs. So for Martin and Sherry rule, we were given the write-up. It talks about Martin and Sherry rule ages 40 and 37 respectively, etc. So we had that information. We were also given, and that's on page 101 in your books. We were also given the neighborhood data and extract from the real estate appraisal. That's on page 104. We were given the consumer loan, the car loan statement. And we were also given the mortgage loan statement. So let's look at the net wage statement first. What is the first item that we should be putting in here? Sorry? Okay, but do we have cash for Martin and Sherry rule? Pull out your where you put your answers for Martin and Sherry rule. That's page 101 in your workbooks. Okay, so we weren't provided with any cash information. We weren't provided with any stocks or bonds information. No accounts receivable for them. No cash surrender value of any life insurance policies. And as Natasha is saying in class, the first item we came to was the real estate of $275,000. Where do we get that information from?
From the printout.
The printout, the bank statement, the mortgage loan printout of bank mortgage loan statement. Okay, so there it is to the bottom. Current collateral security value $275,000 to the bottom right of the mortgage loan statement. Okay, what is the next item?
Auto.
Auto, and what's the amount of the auto?
24,300.
24,300, and where did we get that from? From the loan printout as well, yes. So that's on the bottom right side of the screen, 24,300. Okay. What other assets we were provided with? Okay, Natasha's saying nothing. Okay, so since there's no other assets we have been told about, we'll add the assets that we have, which comes to 299,300. Okay, so we add the real estate and the auto. In real life, of course, there would be some cash and some other assets in there. But this is the only information that we've been given. Okay, so we finished with the assets. Let's look at the liabilities. Do they pay any rent?
No.
They don't pay any rent. Okay. Okay. What about credit cards information? Okay, so in the write-up, we're told that they have 2 credit cards. So you'll see highlighted in blue. Additionally, they have 2 credit cards, one at RBC with a $4,000 limit, an outstanding balance of $2,395, and the other at FCIB that has a $3,200 limit. The balance outstanding is $50. So what amount or amounts do we put in the credit card liability section?
Yes, I'm the answer.
And what is that? What is okay? And total, give me a total, please. We're on page 101. We're going through Martin and Sherry Roll case study. And actually you'll have to go further down to the net weight statement that you completed for them. Okay. And if you could let me have that sign-in sheet, because anyone else who's admitted, I want to add them. And someone else just got admitted. Okay. Okay, so all right. All right, so we are looking at the first of two case studies, Martin and Sherry Rule, that are typical exam type questions. For those who are just joining us, open your workbooks to between pages 101 to 108. And currently we're looking at 105, so you're going to be flipping back and forth between the write-up, the bank printouts, the bank statements, and in order to complete, well, actually, you should have already completed the personal net weight statement because we went through this in class. Okay, so we are looking at credit cards. We're now on the liabilities. So we said we add the balances of the two credit cards, which is $2,395 and $50. So it gives us $2,445. Okay, what's the next liability? Do they have a consumer loan? Yes, okay. And what amount do we put in there? The current loan amount, which is 16,100.
162.
You're right, 16,162. We put in the principal balance, right? Okay, and that's circled in the top left-hand side of the printout. Okay. What is the next item? They have a mortgage, right? Okay, and what balance goes in there?
76,935.
Okay, 76,935. And where do we get that? From the loan statement, and we want the principal balance, no accrued interest, not the payoff amount. We want the current loan amount, which is the principal balance. Okay, the current loan amount is your principal balance. That's what you want for the net weight statement. Okay, dealing with principal balances. Okay, so we put that in, and then we add them up, right? Because there are no other liabilities that we are aware of. Okay, so that comes to 95,542. So we include that also. We put that under the total assets. So we subtract the 95,542 from the 299,300, and we should get 203,758. And is this net weight positive or negative? It's positive.
Positive.
Great. Okay. So we've completed the net weight statement for the rules. Let's move on to the TDSR spreadsheet. So salary, $450 a week. How do we express that as monthly? Multiply by 52, divide by 12, right? And that gives us what?
1950.
1950. Okay, I've used 100% of it. And make sure in the exam that you fill in all required areas. It should be shaded. Hopefully, when it's printed out, it'll print out with the shades. But if not, by now, you should all know what should go where. So when you're dealing with salaries, well, income, when you're dealing with income, you'll use the percentage used, whether it's 100% or 50% in this instance. So he gets gratuity of $300 a week. How do we deal with that?
Multiply by 52 divided by 12,
Okay, and we get how much?
1,300,
1,800. And how much of that do we use?
50%.
50%, which is $650. Okay, that goes in the adjusted amount. Now we come to Sherry Roll's income. She has a salary of $2,200 a month. How do we deal with that?
Same.
It's the same. 2,200. We use 100% of it because it's salary. 2,200. She gets a bonus of $9,000 per annum or yearly. Divided by 12 months in a year. And how much of that do we use? We use 50% of that, which is $375. We add their total adjusted income. The adjusted income is the income that we use to calculate the DSR. Okay, because their actual monthly income is more than that. Because two of those incomes we have discounted by 50%. Alrighty, just by way of explanation for some who may have missed that particular class. So you have $5,175 is their total usable income for TDSR purposes, or in the adjusted amount column. Now let's look at the expenses. The mortgage is $975 a month. How do we deal with that in the monthly amount and adjusted amount? So it'll be $975, same, okay.
Same,
The car loan at RBC,
340,
$530, same, okay. The proposed education loan, $340 a month, so same, again. Now, we are told in a legend.
It's not, just
Sorry,
the question is not necessary for us. Yeah,
Yes,
it's
go
just a
ahead.
question. It's not necessary for us to put 100%.
Sorry?
It's not
No,
necessary for the,
No,
okay.
no, because normally loan payments are already expressed as monthly usually. Okay. So really you only do a lot of the adjustments on the mainly by the on the income side. So that's why the percentages are there. Okay, and the legend tells us salary income or wages. You may see the word wages, salary. They're the same. Okay, and then so the legend down to the bottom tells us use 100% of salary or wages, parental income, gratuity, bonuses, or commissions. If the person got commissions, we use 50%. And then now that we move into the credit cards, it is saying to use 5%. So you'll be told what percentage, whether it's 3% or 5%, on the question in the final exam, like we've been doing all along. Okay, so in this instance, we are asked to use 5% when determining the credit card payment, and the first one is a $4,000 limit with a $2,395 balance. How do we deal with that in terms of monthly amount? Okay, 5% of the limit, right? 5% of the limit, and that gives us how much again? $200. So we put that in the adjusted amount as well. So it's $200 monthly, $200 adjustment amount. And the reason why we use the limit for the TDSR, calculating the limit, is because that customer can take that they can take that payment, or they can take that limit up to its hilt, just like that. So it may be a $50 balance today, right? Or this morning, and by the time they go out and leave the interview, they go on and they purchase fridge and stove or whatever it is, and bam, the card is fully utilized, or almost fully utilized. So that's why we use the limit on the TDSR, okay, when we look at the credit cards. Whereas on the net worth statement, which is the first statement we looked at, the spreadsheet, the net worth, we on the liabilities, we put in the balance, because that is what the balance is at that point in time, okay? So I just want to clarify as we go along, to help you understand, for those who may have missed portions of the class when we were dealing with this. Okay, so we're now looking at the CIBC Visa with a $3,200 limit and $50 owing. How do we deal with that? 5% of the $3,200 limit, which gives us how much? $160. So we put that in both columns, monthly amount, the adjusted amount. And then there are no other expenses, so we can add our total expenses, and we get 5,000. Sorry, we get 2,205. 2,205. Okay. What is our TDSR? And how do we? And how do we get that?
Total expenses over income.
Okay, so total expenses is 2,205 divided by the 5,175, right?
Yeah.
And then we multiply by 100 to get the percentage.
Yeah.
Okay. And that gives us so like 42.6 or 43 rounded up. Okay. Remember, if it's 0.5 or higher, you round up. If it's 0.4 or below, you round down. Okay. A way to remember it is how they charge you when you go in the food store or the shops. When they come to where we don't have the 1 cent anymore. Okay, so if it comes to 52 cents, you pay 50 cents. If it comes to 55 cents, you actually pay 60 cents. Okay. Okay.
So the formula is total income by total expenses.
Total income.
Total expenses.
Sorry, total expenses. Total expenses. The expenses is your numerator, and you divide it by the total adjusted income. Multiply by 100. Okay. And the formula should be in one of the early chapters. But in any event, I've decided to provide the formula for the exam. Okay, so we've looked at the net weight statement, we looked at the TDSR spreadsheet. What is the current LPV? Okay, so on the screen I put the equation or the formula. So the loan amount divided by the asset cost or asset value. Okay, so what is the loan amount? The loan amount. Okay, LPV, we're looking at the mortgage.
76,935.
76,935. Doing the mortgage LPV. Okay, so 76,935. And what is the asset cost of our, where do we get that from? Okay, you get that from the printout or the bank loan printout or the loan statement, whichever you want to call it. Okay. So we get that as a circle up there again. Principal, we're dealing with principal balances. Okay, so 76,935. Okay, so we put that as our numerator or top number. And what is the asset cost or asset value? The current asset cost or value?
275.
Sorry?
I said 203.
275,000.
203. Where do you get 203 from?
I was looking at
Uh,
that.
No.
275,000.
Okay, we're looking at the mortgage, and this is the mortgage covers the house, the building. Okay,
You look at the collateral.
so you still look at that mortgage loan statement. Okay, so for the top number, right? You look at the current loan amount. I have it there on the screen, right? Okay, so the top upper left, 76.9. That's your numerator, and then your denominator or the asset cost is 275 is the current collateral security value. Okay, and so there we have it. 76,935 divided by 275 gives us what?
27.97.
Okay, 27, 27.97, 27.98,
28.
28 rounded. Okay,
Yes.
So you get the
that's how you get the LPV or LPC. Yes. Okay. Okay, so let's look at the current equity. Okay. And we're told that the owner's equity is any dollar value or amount you own in a real estate property, less any loan or other encumbrance outstanding against it. What could be another encumbrance on a real property tax? And does that rate come before a mortgage, or so like if we had to sell the property, would we take care of the real property tax first, or we take care of our mortgage first? We take care of the real property tax because that's owned by the government. Okay, the government is first in line. Okay, so real property tax comes out first. Okay, so real property tax is an encumbrance. Okay, we're not told in this instance that there's any real property tax. So equity, here's the equation for equity, and again, you'll be provided with this formula in the exam. Okay, so it's the equity is current value less current encumbrances. The only encumbrance we're aware of is the mortgage with ourselves. Okay, so the current value is what? 275. See, we're using a lot of the same information to get different things, right? Okay, so 275, and we get that from the bottom, again, from the bottom right, which is the current collateral security value, 275. That's our current value. And what is the amount of our encumbrance? 76,935, which is again, we get that from the loan printout or the mortgage loan statement, whatever you call it. We'll just call it the printout for convenience for the rest of the class, for the remainder of the class tonight. Okay, so the current loan amount, 76,935. We subtract that from the $275,000, and then that gives us 198,065. Okay. All right. Now, given the information that you have, the net weight statement, the net weight of Mr. and Mrs. Rowe is fairly substantial. The TDSR is a little tight, but it's still workable. It includes the proposed loan. The LPV, they have a good LPV ratio. They have good equity, almost $200,000 in equity, as we just saw, 198 odd. So the question is, would you grant a loan to the Rolls? And in class, we agreed we would. Yes, we would. Okay. Give them all the money, someone says in class. I know about that, but okay, so let's support our answer using the comparator credit C's and some of the things that we came up in class, and I kind of paraphrase them. One, both Mr. and Mrs. Roll have job stability and tenure. Both have a good number of income earning years before normal retirement. And what I did was I had put them in the order of character, ability, capacity, and insurance / collateral, right? So blue blue is for character. Okay. So 1, 2, the third one, we said they have excellent credit history, or payment history. They have a positive and substantial net worth. Then we said getting into ability or capacity. They have a good ability or capacity to pay the loan with some room to accommodate additional debt. And then we had one for collateral. We said the collateral is excellent in terms of its condition, value, equity, and subdivision. And we got that because, you know, it showed that they was doing work to the property on an annual basis, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, that's all in the write-up. So just a note to the bottom, NB, note well, items 1 to 4 deals with character, 5 deals with ability or capacity, and 6 deals with insurance collateral. Okay. So we've gotten our points down, so we just now need to put when you'll have the sheet, and so you have to determine whether or not you're going to use compare or whether you use credit C's. And so for each one of your answers, put character, your answer, ability or capacity, your answer, insurance or collateral, the answer. Okay. So if you chose to do compare, this is how it would look: character, ability, insurance, putting those items there. And again, normally this question will attract 3 points. So it's 1 point for each. So you don't want to list a whole 4 for character. Okay. So you list 1 for character, list 1 for ability, list 1 for insurance. Okay. And then if you're using credit C's, the same thing would apply for credit C's when you're using character, capacity and collateral. Okay. So we've done those 6 areas of Martin and Sherry rule, completed the net worth statement, all the way down to supporting our answer. Any questions before we move on to the Balfours? And you can pull that out. That was your homework number 4, and we did some extra. We did some extra things on that. Let me see if for the benefit of those in class. The benefit of those in class, let me see if I have any more to print it. Okay. Yes, I do. Hey. Some of you in class were here. Let me do this so you would have gotten one of these copies. I'll just provide you another copy tonight. If you don't need to use it, if you were here, you could just go. If you were here, go along with the sheet that you had. If not, you could just save it to use at home, practice or whatever. Okay. So those of you on Zoom, it's homework number 4. Okay. And is a net weight statement and the TDSR spreadsheet for the Balfours, which is section 4. Like I said, we did additional work to it, like we did for the to complete it, like we did for the rules. Okay, so let's look at Hezekiah and Lottie Balfour. These, like the roles of fictitious people. So if you happen to know someone that actually have one of these names, it's only by coincidence. Okay, so the Balfours, we're going to do the same thing we did as we did with the roles. Okay, so we're going to complete the net weight statement, complete the TDSR statement, the LPV equity, answer the question yes or no if we're going to give the loan, and support our answers for comparing and credit Cs. Okay, so you have the write-up. Like the rules, you also have printouts. So you have a car loan printout, you have a mortgage loan printout, and we have the net worth statement. Okay. So what's the first item that we put for the net worth statement on the asset side? Looking at the write-up.
Dash.
Okay, so just below the middle of the write-up, I have it highlighted on the screen. Among the other assets are $500 in savings account with RBC, $2,100 in savings account with Biff's Bank, and $937 on checking account also with Biff's Bank. So we add the three of them together, right? And we come up with $3,537. What is the next asset that they own? Sorry? Some stock shares, okay. And that's right after the statement about the cash. They also own $2,700 in BIS6 listed APD shares. Okay, so that's the only amount of shares that we know. So that goes in stocks and bonds, right? Okay, stocks, bonds, shares. Okay, are there any accounts receivables? You sure? Okay. What about life CSV, cash surrender value of life insurance? 19,007. Okay, so they have a joint life policy with a face amount of 325,000. Okay, and a cash surrender value of 19,763. Okay, so you only use the cash surrender value because if they're both alive, and they are both alive, aren't they? So the only value in that while they're alive is the 19,763. Okay, only if one of them die or they both die, then somebody could get $325,000. Okay, So we put the cash surrender value of the life insurance, which is 19,000. We put that in the net weight statement. Okay, real estate. Okay, so we know that they only have one. Well, we only have total of one property they own, which is the house. And someone says 644,500. Where did you get that figure from? Okay. All right. Okay, so we get it from the loan printout, right? The mortgage loan printout. Okay, auto or automobiles. Okay, so we're told in the write-up, coming toward the top, the third paragraph, the Balfours will have a car loan over one of their vehicles. Says collectively the cars are worth 47,000 and are both comprehensively insured. Okay, so they're worth $47,000. And so we put that combined amount in there, $47,000. Okay, yes, ma'am.
So we had like a car loan type
Right.
statement. I don't know, at 27. Divided, start to lot. Instead of insurance. That's
Because we have not been given the value of the other car. Okay, so if we look at the statement, we'll see the current value in the bottom right hand. It shows the current value of the car. Okay, now if you wanted to find out the value of the second car, you subtract that from the $47,000. Okay, but you don't need to do that in this class. Okay, so that is why we're given the information. Both combined are 47. Okay, so you'll either get the information from the loan printout, or you'll get the information from the write-up. Okay, or a combination of it. Okay, and sometimes there's an extract, or usually there's an extract of the appraisal that provides some information. Okay, and that's really to help you when you're making a determination, because it'll talk about the neighborhood and that sort of stuff. You know, what the neighborhood is like. All right. So, are there any other assets that they own that we are told about? Yes. Okay. So 37,500. Okay. Well, let's go first things first. We're told about something before we get to the 3,700, right? We're told furnishings. Okay. So total furnishings are $52,000. Okay. So we put that in there. That's in the write-up, about the middle of the page. Okay, 52. And the other asset is, as previously said, 37,500, and that is what? An art collection, some paintings. Okay, so we're told they have modest art collection of paintings of various Bahamian artists, valued at 37,500 collectively. Okay, so we put that 37,500 in there. Okay. Any other assets we're told about? No. Okay, so we add those, and we should get a total of 807,000 flat. Okay, so now we move over to the liabilities. What liabilities are we told that they have? Credit cards, okay, because they don't pay rent, because rent is out because they pay a mortgage. Okay, so credit cards.
Consumer loan.
Sorry?
Consumer loan.
Okay, but let's look at the credit cards first. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so credit cards. There are two credit cards. One with a $5,000 limit and a nil balance, and the other one with a $2,000 limit and an $850 balance. So what amounts do we put in the net worth statement?
850.
850. So we're looking at principal balances in the okay, so it's 850. Because one card has 850 and one card has nil. Okay, so 850. And we're told a consumer loan. What is the amount of that consumer loan?
8258.
8258, and we get that information from where? From the car loan printout. Okay, and it says the current loan amount in that toward the top left of the printout. Okay, we have a mortgage, 142,903. And where do we get that?
142 now. From the printout.
From the mortgage printout. Okay, the mortgage printout. So it's 142,903. Again, that's the principal balance or the current loan amount. Okay, so that's principal balance, no interest accrued, just the current loan amount, principal balance. So we add those because there are no other liabilities we're told about. So that comes to $152,011. We subtract that, we move that over to where it says less total liabilities, we put it in there as well. So 152,0111 subtracted from 807 gives us, sorry? We didn't put the
654,099.
we have 8,258. That's the auto loan. Yeah, consumer loan, auto loan. Okay. 152,011, yes. Okay. Anyone else with a question? No? Okay. So we put that in the less total liabilities, that left bottom. So we subtract that from the 807,000, and we get 654,989, almost $655,000 in net worth. And the majority of that is in real estate. Okay. Okay. Is a net worth negative, positive or negative? Okay, this one again, like the rolls, this one is positive. Okay, quite positive. Alrighty. All right, so let's move on to the TDSR statement, complete that. Okay, so Mr. Balfour earns $750 a week. How do we deal with that? Okay, multiply by 52, divided by 12, and we get what amount? $3,250. We use 100% of it. Okay, our legend down there reminds us salary or wages, we use 100%. Okay, rental income, gratuity bonus is 50%, and for the credit cards, in this instance, again, we'll use 5% like we used for the rolls. So he makes $6,000 per annum in bonus. How do we deal with that in the monthly amount to get the monthly amount? $6,000 divided by 12 months in the year, and that gives us $500 per month. How much of that do we use? 50%, and that gives us $250 in the adjusted amount. We move to Lottie. She earns $5,200 a month. How do we deal with that in the monthly and adjusted amount columns? Okay, so 5,200. We use 100% of it, so adjusted amount would be 5,200. Rent from the efficiency. No one asked me this question. Why did we put the rent under Lottie and not under Hezekiah? No one picked that up. No, just simply to give Lottie give Lottie two incomes plus in this instance. Okay, and usually the women run the money. Okay, women run the money, so that's another reason, and probably actually that is more so the reason that I put it there than the one I gave you first, the reason I gave you first. Okay? So us men, when we come home, we turn our paycheck over to our wives because they know how to spend it better than us.
It is.
Right? After I take it by $100, then I get the rest of the wife, right? No, well, actually, the best way to deal with combined incomes and expenses is to pool the money into an account for expenses in proportion. So if one person makes 65, if one person makes 60% of the total, their salary equals 60% of the total income. Combined income on the other one is 40%. That's how they should share the expenses, right? So in this instance, Mr. Balfour makes 32.5, so that's almost that 60-40 split almost, right? So he would contribute percentage wise to the expenses, or ideally that's probably the best way to deal with it for equity. Okay, so no one feels, mind you, in this instance, even if we had the rent, even if we had the rent of Mr. Balfour, Miss Balfour still end up with more money, making more money per month than Mr. Balfour, right? So she'll end up with more money, but percentage wise, that's what she is entitled to, or would be entitled to, if you were sharing your monthly expenses on the equity method. Okay.
What if Mr. Balfour used to give Miss Balfour allowance?
Sorry.
What if Mr. Balfour used to give Miss Balfour allowance?
Oh, that's totally up to Mr. Balfour.
So where we put that on this?
Oh, no. Because you just have you just having money. That's not any extra money. That's only just money coming from him, shifting to her. That's just a shift. Okay, so if he's giving her allowance, that's not extra money for her. Now, if she was getting money from, let's say, her sister was living with them or someone, so she was getting money from the sister was giving her $250 in lieu of rent to be there because the sister was going through hard times or whatever it is, right? The bank would make a decision whether or not they will use that income or not. Okay, for maybe for short-term loans, if a bank uses it, they will use it for short-term loans, but not like for a mortgage. Okay, because there's an anticipated the sister's going to be there forever and ever, although sometimes it ends up that way. Okay, all righty. So salary, 52, use 100%. Rent from the efficiency apartment, $500 a month. How do we deal with that? Monthly amount is $500, and we use how much percent of it? 50%, which is $250, right? Okay, so we add the adjusted amount column for the income, and we should get $8,950. All right, so let's move on to expenses. Loans, mortgage, $1,140 a month. How do we deal with that? Okay, so $1,140 in the monthly amount and the adjusted, because it's not adjusted. Proposed further charge, $348 a month. How do we deal with that in the monthly and the adjusted amount? Same, okay. The car loan, how do we deal with that? Same, 725. Excuse me. She got bounced. Okay, I just saw it. Okay, thanks. Okay, so I just had to readmit. I'm not surprised that with the weather, the internet is even more unstable probably tonight. I'm surprised this is the first time somebody has had to be readmitted for the night. Okay, so we just finished looking at the car loan. So $725 a month. So that goes in the monthly amount and the adjusted amount. Now let's deal with the credit cards. $5,000 limit, nil owing. How do you deal with that? Okay, so 5%, we're told use 5% down to the bottom, credit cards, use 5%, so 5% of the limit, which is $250. So that goes in the monthly amount. It also goes in the adjusted amount because we do not do any adjustments for that. The next credit card, the RBC one with a $2,000 limit and $850 owing. How do we deal with that? Okay, so 5% of 2,000, that gives us $100. Again, that goes in both columns. There being no more expenses, we total them up, and they come to 2,563. 2,563. What is our TDSR? Okay. So it'll be 2,563 divided by 8,950 times 100 gives you your percentage.
29%.
So you'll right. Okay, so you'll have 28.64 or 28.6 or 29% rounded up. Okay, any one of those three answers are acceptable. Okay. All right, so let's move now to the current mortgage, LTV. Okay, then there's our calculation formula. The loan amount divided by the asset cost amount times 100 gives us the LPC or LPV. So what is our numerator, our top number, the loan amount? 142,903.
142,903.
Okay, that's correct. We get that from the printout, the mortgage loan printout, and the current loan amount. Circle there on your screen. Okay, so that becomes our numerator, our top number. Where do we get our asset cost or value?
And the printout.
Right, we get that from the bottom of the printout on the right hand side, 644,500. Okay, so we're now able to do our calculation. So 142,903 divided by 644,500 times 100 gives us
22.17
22.17
or
or 22.2 or 22% rounded. I don't have it on the screen, but 22% rounded. And remember, that's less than 0.5. So it's so you round it down. Okay, so 22.17 or 22.2 or 22%. Okay, the current equity. Let's look at the current mortgage equity. There's our formula, our equation. The current value less any current encumbrances gives us the current equity. So what is the current value?
4,500.
Okay, 644,500. We get that. You see that circle on the screen from the bottom right hand of the mortgage printout. Okay, so that's our current value. So we need to take away any encumbrances. The encumbrance will be the mortgage loan balance, right? Loan principal balance. So what is that amount?
142,903.
Yes, okay, again, circled on the screen. So you find it on the mortgage loan printout. Okay, so we subtract 142,903 from 644,500, and we get
501,597.
yes, 501,597. Okay, so just under $502,000 equity. So again, they have pretty healthy equity. Okay. Now the question is, given those numbers, they have a healthy positive net worth. The TDSR is pretty good, much better than the rules. The LPV is good. They have good equity, over $500,000 equity. So using those factors along with some of the other information you provided with, would you grant a loan to them? Pardon? You like to give away all the money. That's the second time you say give all the money. Okay. So yes, we agreed that we would give them the loan. Okay. And so now here it comes for time for us to support our answers using either comparative credit C's. And so what we came up with was, we said the Balfours pay the debts very well. As character, capacity, TDSR, including the proposed loan, is 29% rounded. Collateral, the Balfours have very healthy equity in that they only owe 142 odd against their residence, which is currently valued 644.5. If you needed, if this was this particular thing was question had 4 points. With 4 points, you might then add. Additionally, it was located in a subdivision where residences are valued in excess of $1 million. So you want to make, for each point, usually it's valued at 3 points. Okay, one for each category. Okay, or three main factor. So, and I think Carrie asked a question in the last class when he was dealing with this. Do we need to say this is evidence of good character? In the exam, no. Okay, but if you're building your case on the job, you won't be putting it. When you're doing your assessment, you won't be putting character, blah 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 blah. Okay, you'll be just making your points. So in making your points, you say the Balfours paid their debts very well. This is evidence of good character, so that the credit underwriter understands fully well why you are making the statement about how they pay their debts very well. You're building your case, you're making your case. But again, for the exam, you really only need to say the Balfours pay their debt very well. Okay? And of course, if you're using without a credit C, sorry, if you're using Compari, use character, ability, insurance, and so your answers would be the same. The answers don't change. It's just would you choose to use in the exam? Okay. All right. Any questions on case studies? No?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to just kind of go quickly through the chapters. There's some things in there each chapter I may stop and go through. And then I'll end after I go through quickly with the chapters. I'll look at some typical exam questions, and then we do the tips and information. We round up the class with those. Okay, so the main points for chapters 1, and I'm trying to limit it to where to guide you to where the exam questions may come from. Okay, so so chapter 1. Okay, we have we looked at deposits versus loans, right? Deposits versus loans, and you see for the customer, deposit is an asset. For the bank, it's a liability, and similarly, when we look at the loan is a liability for the customer, but an asset for the bank. Okay. The next important point is reserve requirements. Banks are prohibited from using these reserves to extend loans to customers. Okay, so you cannot use primary reserves, nor can you use secondary reserves. Okay, if it say reserves, it's reserve. You cannot use it. Okay, So the two categories, the primary reserves. The primary reserve is also known as a statutory reserve, and the secondary reserve is known as the liquid asset ratio. Okay. And then the note at the bottom, primary reserves plus your secondary reserves gives you your total reserves. And as noted, that last question in the chapter review, at the end of your chapter where it says review questions, that question that deals with calculating reserves, none of that is coming on the exam, okay? That was only just for you to okay? So that is not coming up. You won't have a question like that. Okay, so let's move to chapter 2. Chapter 2, the key areas or points in chapter 2 are the definitions, okay, whether lending was an art, a science, or both, reasons banks lend and to whom, okay, so banks lend to individuals and businesses, right? Okay. The importance of KYC, due diligence, and money laundering awareness, key aspects of lending, and the three, lending is left out, but understanding risk, assessing risk, and managing risk, okay? So when we look at lending as a science, you're using assessment tools, such as the canons of lending. What are the canons of lending? What is another name for the canons of lending? Comparing, okay? The comparing method, okay? DSRs, that's debt service ratios, that's your TDSR, GDSR, okay, and CDSR, okay? Financial ratios, we didn't go through those because we didn't do business lending, okay? But financial ratios relate to the businesses, okay? So it is a science because we have assessment tools that we use, okay? So it's scientific, okay? So for example, when you use TDSR, okay, that divided by that give you a percentage, right? Okay. It's quantitative, okay, which means it's concrete. It's concerned with facts, with numbers, statistics, etc. Okay. And the art is based upon experience and skill, and that would come with the experience of the lender. Okay. And it's qualitative as opposed to science, which is quantitative. It is qualitative, which means it's subjective and abstract. And that's where particularly if a loan is kind of like borderline or needs, you need to actually sell that to the approving officer. That's where the art really comes in. Okay, so you got to say, well, we know that the TDSR is a little shaky here, but if we look at this and we look at that, we look at their how many more earning years they've been promoted 3 times in the last 3 years, so they're earning potential, and they're not at the top level, right? They moved up, from clerk to supervisor to senior supervisor to assistant manager to manager, and there are other positions that is assistant director, okay, there's managing director or president. So what you do is you build your case, okay, and so that's the qualitative or the subjective side of it. All right. So we go into chapter 3. Chapter 3, we looked at the 3 types of business customers. So the sole trader or sole proprietor, the partnership, the corporation or limited company. And when we took a closer look at the borrowing company, there were some things that you would have to consider when you are someone comes to borrow. So there are the articles and memorandum of association, okay, and excuse me, and there were like 5. Remember, we broke that down into five parts, right? A, B, C, D. Okay, class. The borrowing resolution. We also broke that down into several parts. I actually put the A, B, C, D, whatever it is. If you didn't put it in your notes, look back at the PowerPoint presentation that was sent because it was in the PowerPoint presentation. Okay, the resolution to appoint bankers, the company seal, annual returns, certificate of good standing or certificate of incorporation. What's the difference between a certificate of good standing and a certificate of incorporation? When will a certificate of good standing be issued? Would it be issued for a startup company or a going concern? A going concern, okay? If it was a startup company that just started, you use a certificate of incorporation because it's just being incorporated and it hasn't completed a full year yet, okay? So if they're starting up, or if it's a startup or it's a baby company that has not completed a whole year yet, you would need a certificate of incorporation. But if it's been in business for a year or more, then you have a certificate of good standing, which will be issued at the end of each year. Okay. Then of course there's an account mandate, authorized signatories for the account, for the corporation or business. All right. So chapter 4, we looked at the different lending products. Okay, and we compared them for business and personal, and they're pretty much the same. Okay, except when we got into some other business products that you won't give to individuals, other than borrowing companies. So it's a sole proprietor, partnership, or limited company, corporation. Then these following ones will be used by them. So there's a customs bond. Okay, it guarantees the payment of import duty up to a specified amount. Customs check writing guarantees payment made by checks for import duty up to a specified amount. Okay, and you see both of those deal with import duties, customs. The third one is a bid bond. And then you have the performance bond. One is during the bidding process. And the performance bond, if the bid is successful, that person has to provide a performance bond to the person for whom they're doing the work. Okay. Then we looked at a letter of credit, which is called a documentary credit or documentary letter of credit. This is used mainly for international trade. And what we did was there was a diagram of one in module 2. So we looked at the simplified version of it. Okay, we'll get to that in a moment. But these 5 items, the customs bond, the customs check writing facility, the bid bond, the performance bond, and the letter of credit, are all written agreements, usually with a standard form or format, and are usually supported by cash. Okay. So let's look at the documentary credit. Okay. So so I have A, B, C, D there. Okay. I want you to help me fill in the blanks. So for A, what goes in A? What goes in A? You have trade happening between 2 people. If I have a business and I'm bringing things in, I am the importer, right? Okay. So importer. Okay. So if A is the importer and they're doing trade with the exporter, okay. So importer would go in to where to effect this payment, because you see the cycle is going, right? So C would be what? The bank. Okay, whose bank?
Importer's bank.
The importer's bank. Okay, so the importer's bank. So the importer goes into his or her bank or their bank. Okay, and they set up the payment. Okay, and the payment goes to where? the
Exporters
exporter's bank, and ultimately to the exporter. Okay. So a typical question, how the question would be laid out. You won't fill in the blank, because this will be like in a fill in the blank. So you won't actually put the information on the document itself. You put the information on it'll be laid out here like A blank. In the class, you all can't see it because it's cut off. Okay, but the top line is A, the second one is B. Okay, so so A is what?
Payment.
Payment. A is payment. Okay, A is payment. Okay, remember payment? Okay, so you have the importer goes to the importer's bank because they want to effect a payment to the exporter's bank. Okay, what is B? Exporter. Okay, good. So chapter 5, that dealt with the interview. Okay, so there were some things that we looked at doing before the interview, some stuff during the interview, and stuff after the interview. Okay, if you follow, you read through it, a lot of it will be. There's no way you can remember all those points, but if you look at it logically, okay, would this happen before the interview? Would it happen during the interview? Would it happen after the interview? Okay, so so this isn't trying to remember all those things under each one, but what you're told, you're asked, it's a logical question. Does this happen before? Does it happen during? Does it happen after? Okay. Chapter 6. Okay, we started the lending process. Okay. So we talked about the overall structure. So we said the successful credit process involves carrying out the following 4 essential foundational activities. The first one was a fill in the blank, I think it was. So you have to structure the process, and the process was origination, underwriting, administration, and servicing. Okay. The second thing you do is you agree to the lending products offered. The third thing is agree to the criteria to qualify. And then fourth, you select a team to carry the process with a comprehensive list of products and criteria. Okay, so when all of these financial institutions were initially being founded, that's what they did. They decided initially this is what the organization structure is going to look like. These are the products we want to offer. This is the criteria, and this is the team. And this is an ongoing thing because you add new products. You may have to change the organization structure. So, for example, you recall I mentioned that I worked at FinCo, and in the early days of FinCo, we did in the loan department we did loans and we did delinquency, right? So we had to call delinquent customers and follow straight through to court, to foreclosure. Okay, so we had to do from A to B, from granting the loan to collecting it if they don't pay. And then the structure changed. And in changing the structure, they separated the granting of the loan process from the delinquency. So they separated the 2 departments. Okay. And that's pretty much how most financial institutions are now. For the most part, they're separate units. And a lot of that was driven also by the central bank guidelines and international guidelines, okay, set by mainly the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision, which is based in Basel, Switzerland, right? So they have these guidelines which have been normally adopted by central banks worldwide. And so if you look at the Basel guidelines for granting loans, and you look at the central bank guidelines for granting loans, you'll see some similarity. And then if you look at your own guidelines, you'll see how, for your particular bank, you'll see how they kind of mimic the central bank guidelines. Okay. So, okay. So, the 4 areas: loan administration, those are branches; loan underwriting, that's the credit underwriting unit or person. They make the decisions whether the loan should be approved, declined, deferred, modified. Loan administration deals with the processing and control. Loan servicing, that's your collections, asset recovery when things go wrong. And diagrammatically, that's how it looks. Okay. Then we looked at a spreadsheet, the steps. We looked at the steps in the lending process, and a topic that we recently looked at, item number 13, monitoring and controlling. You see that monitoring and controlling, that's everybody business. Okay, everybody got a piece of that pie, an equal piece of that pie. Okay, monitoring and controlling, that's very important. Okay, and after class on Tuesday, 2 students, we had a conversation. I was saying how one of the things that we fall down in is paying attention to detail, documenting, and monitoring and controlling, right? And so that's why I'm highlighting that here. 13, monitoring and controlling is everybody's business. Okay? Any questions? Okay, no questions. We go on to 7. Okay, we're looking at the credit application here. And remember, we said that the application has 2 basic components. It don't matter how many pages it has. We can have 1 page, 2 pages. Well, I shouldn't say 1 page. 1 page, 2 sides. Okay, anyway, 2 pages for all intents and purposes. 2 pages or more. Okay, I've seen applications in excess of 10 pages. Alrighty, how are they in their speed of whatever it is, and that ain't commercial lending. To me, that's just too convoluted. Okay, 5 or less pages, please. To me, that's the best. That's the best thing. Okay, which is why I advocate for those 3 main key factors, or the big 3, I call them, in Campari and Credit C's. Deal with those 3. Whether you're looking at business or personal lending, you can't go wrong if you're dealing with those 3. Okay, but again, you got to be driven by your financial institution. Okay, so while the actual format of credit applications varies from one bank to the next, all applications have 2 basic components: the client's request and the bank's response. Okay, so the client's request has 3 components. Okay, it has the demographics, which is their personal demographic information: the name, address, age, employment, etc. Okay, remember when we looked at a sample of 2 loan applications, we saw that. Then in the middle of both of them, they had the financial information, which is their statement of affairs or their net worth statement. Okay, and then of course the request, what it is that they want, and that took us into something called PAT, purpose, amount, and term. Okay, okay. Then there's the bank's response, which is 2 components. It's the assessment, so the bank makes an assessment, and once the bank makes an assessment, a decision is made from that assessment. Okay. Then we moved on to looking at Campari itself. We began with character, and we said character is concerned with 4 things: KYC, employment history, credit payment history, and net worth. Okay. KYC, employment history, credit payment history, net worth. Then we moved to ability, and we said next to character, ability is probably the most important component of credit. If it is clear that the client cannot pay, then the decision should be to decline the loans. And we look at debt servicing, that's your debt service ratios, and any other calculations, income confirmations, and any calculations, making sure that all income that is stated, that when you are doing your assessment, that it is converted to monthly because usually payments are monthly, with exception, there's some loans where they're quarterly payments or semi-annual payments. I remember doing it for government. With government, there's some of their loans that were paid quarterly, and some of their loans that were paid semi-annually. Very few of their loans were paid on a monthly basis, right?
When it's paid like that, is interest still being accrued daily?
Yes, interest is still being accrued daily. Yeah, but that's how the government chose to do those particular loans. Okay, I would have included the option to pay monthly.
The interest is lower,
Sorry,
but the interest is lower? Because
the interest would be lower monthly because
no, I
if
mean, how the loan is to be paid every quarter.
if you pay, the more frequently you pay it, the less interest you pay because the principal balance reduces at a faster rate.
Time. But
Yes.
the initial interest, the proposed interest, would it be higher or lower? Because of how it's paid, or that don't have to do with it?
It would be higher if it's higher if it's quarterly, and even more higher if it's semi-annually. Yeah, because you're paying. So you're paying. Let's say you got the government borrowed $5 million, $10 million. They borrowed $10 million at 7%. Okay, so they make their first payment on the first month, right? A portion of that payment goes to reduce the principal. They pay the second month, the third month. So every month the principal goes down. Yeah, but I'm also saying it for the sake of some of the other students in the class, right? So so it would be higher. Okay, now it probably could be administratively why the government wanted to do it that way. So all right. So then of course the debt service ratios. There are three of them. But the one we pay attention to in this class is the total debt service ratio. So there's the consumer debt service ratio, the gross debt service ratio, the total debt service ratio. The CDSR is 10%, the GDSR is 35%, combined for 45%. They make up the TDSR. And those are one guideline sent by the central bank, and they're also international guidelines. Although the central bank now allows total debt servicing up to 50%. That does not negate the fact that it should not be more than 45. Okay? And any accounts that exceed the 45% have to be, particularly at 50%, have to be reported to central bank. Okay? Then there's income verification. There's some things that should be on the confirmation letter. Okay? For self-employed persons, ideally the most 3 years financial statements. Okay. So yep. So the most recent 3 years financial statements. Okay. So margin is the bank's profit potential. Okay, and that is concerned with two things primarily: the interest rate, and is the interest rate priced to reflect the risk that you're taking with regard to that client and that product, and are the fees in line with the product granted. So interest is by far the largest, the lion's share of where banks get their interest income is where the bank gets the largest share of its income. And then of course their fees, loan fees, okay? Then we look at something called TLC. When we look at the product, we're looking at the type of loan risk, the liquidity risk, the customer risk. And when we dig deeper down on the customer risk, the C in TLC, we come up with something called PACT, P-A-C-T, okay, which is purpose of the credit facility, age of the client or business, the collateral offered, and the term of the facility, okay? The PACT is not to be confused with PAT, okay? PAT is when you're dealing with the loan application, the client's request, okay, purpose, amount, term, whereas PACT, as we said, is purpose, age, collateral, term. Okay, so two different things. Okay, so just going back, demographics, that's the application, that's PAT. Okay, so here's where they differ. Okay. So there was a in the homework I mentioned at the beginning of the class, and the homework for the income assessment spreadsheet. I didn't go through that because I was going to go through it during the class, and so later on in the class. So let's look at that now. And so there was chapter 8. There's this spreadsheet there. Top of page 8. Which is okay, yep. So 2.9 million, interest rate is 8%. The gross interest to be earned is 232,000. The cost of funds is 3.1. The funding cost dollar amount is 89,900. The annual net revenue, where we subtract the funding costs from the gross interest or gross interest, gives us the annual net revenue, and the margin or the spread is the difference between the interest rate and the cost of funds rate. Okay, so let's go through this piece by piece. Okay, so how do we get the gross interest? Okay, so 8% of 2.9, and that gives us 232,000. Okay. Okay. We were told we okay. So the cost of funds rate is 3.1%. What are funding costs based on our cost of fund rate? What is it costing us to lend these people at 8%? How do we get that amount? Okay, so it's 2.9 million times 3.1%, or another way of saying it's 3.1% of 2.9 million. That gives us 89.9. Okay. Now, how do we get our annual revenue amount? Annual net revenue. We could work this out two ways. Right. Okay. So it'd be 232,000 minus 89,900, which will give us 142,100. Or we could work out the margin spread first. We could subtract 3.1% from 8%. That would give us 4.9%. Okay, and if you want to double check, that 4.9% of 2.9 million is 142,100. Sorry? Page 43, top of page 43.
The actual breakdown, how you get it?
No, we worked it in class, and the PowerPoint presentation was sent.
The next week, because I've been in class.
Sorry, you weren't in class?
Oh.
Okay. So sorry, what did you say?
The other way of finding out for annual net said margin spread.
Okay. Okay, what you can do is multiply 2.9 million by 4.9. Okay. Okay.
Margin spread.
Okay, let me start from the beginning. Okay. Okay. So you gotta take notes on this because no step-by-step notes were given. Okay, because you have to follow it how it's done, because it's a spreadsheet. Okay, it's like how we did the TDSR spreadsheet. Okay, so we have 2.9 million, and the interest rate is 8%. We're charging the customer interest rate of 8%, okay? That's what that means. So the customer is borrowing 2.9 million, and we're lending it to them at 8%. 8% of 2.9 million in terms of dollars, actual interest income is $232,000. So you see how we got that, right?
Gross interest.
2.9 times 8% gives you the gross interest of 232,000, right? Okay, good. Okay. Now we are told that the cost of funds we're given all the information, but I'm saying how working it to show how we arrive at it. So we were given the cost of rate funds because you'll always have to be given at least two.
The funding costs, that's what we're gonna.
Right. Okay. So the cost of funds or the funding costs, in most instances for us, it'll be the central bank prime rate. Okay. But there's some instances, and since you missed the class, there's some instances, because this is business financing, where let's say, for example, Bank A may not have the $2.9 million to lend this customer, but this is a good customer of theirs. They don't want their customer going to another bank, okay? But they don't have that kind of liquidity. They don't have almost $3 million to lend. So they'll call Bank B and they'll say, hey, listen, we need to borrow $3 million from you, right? And so Bank B will say, okay, I will lend you $3 million at 3.1%. Okay. And so because they're lending it to us at 3.1%, that is our cost of funds. Okay. So, or whatever the interest rate is they would charge us, it would be our cost of funds. So if we're charging the customer 8%, and it's costing us 3.1%, okay, our net profit, I guess you'd call it, in this case, at the very end, we call it the margin or the spread, right? Or annual net revenue is the difference between the 8% and the 3.1, okay, which is 4.9%, okay, and whatever 4.9% equates to in dollars of the 2.9 million, okay. So first of all, let's determine funding costs. So we say the cost of funds is 3.11%. 3.1% of 2.9 is 89,900. You see, we got that, right? 3.1% of 2.9 million is 89,900. Right? 2.9 million times 3.1% is 89,900. You got it? Okay. So far we have the interest rate that we charging them is 8%. That interest rate and that gross interest rate, they same. Okay. One is expressed as a percentage. One we express it as a dollar equivalent of that percentage. Okay. The cost of funding rate, that's a percentage. We express it as a dollar equivalent, which is our funding cost. Okay. So we go to our third pair. Okay. And the annual net revenue or the margin spread, they are basically the net between the first two and the second two. Okay. So if you want to get your annualized net revenue, which is dollars, you subtract your funding costs from your gross interest. Okay, so it's 232 minus 89.9. That would give you $142,100. The margin or spread is 8% minus 3.1, which is 4.9%. And if you want to check that 4.9%, because remember now, we got this 142,100 by subtracting 89.9 from 232, right? So what you'll do is you'll multiply $2.9 million by 4.9%, and you should come up with $142,100.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2.9 million times 4.9.
And that's also how we can get.
Right. So if you want to double check it, okay. Does that answer your question, Miss? Yeah. Okay. Don't worry. We can do one or two more of these. Okay. So you'll get the already. So now the second line is a charge on a new facility, right? So we're charging them fees on this facility, and we charge the fee amount we're charging them is 1%. Okay. So if we're charging them 1% on $2.9 million, that comes up to $29,000. So what we do is we put that in our annual net revenue. That's why those other areas are blocked out. Okay, so it's guiding you to where it should go. Okay, so on an annual basis, we charge this 1% fee.
And how do we get it?
So it's 1%, because you see it says charge on new facility 1%. Okay, so we're charging them 1%. 1% of the loan amount is of 2.9 million, gives us 29,000. Everyone sees that, right? Okay. So then we just do our totals. So for gross interest, we just bring it down because it's just one figure. So annualized projections, 232,000 for gross interest. Funding costs, 89,900. When it comes to annual net revenue, we have two. We have the interest, the net interest income, and we have the fee, the 1% fee charge. That comes to $171,100. Sorry? You add those two columns. Okay, those two rows, I should say. 142, 1,000 plus 29. Gives us 171, 100. Right? Okay. Let's look at another one. Okay. So ABZ Furniture Company Limited. This company is borrowing 1.75 million, and we have some blanks in there we need to complete on that first row. Okay, you will always be given sufficient information to be able to complete it. Okay, so we're told that we're charging this customer 10.25%. The cost of funds, it's costing us 4.75%. Okay, that gives us sufficient information. So let's start. First things first. Let's work out the gross interest. How do we get the gross interest or gross interest?
1.75 million times the 10.25%.
Okay, and so you should get 179,375. Right? Okay. Cost of funds. How do we the cost of funds amount?
1.75 times the 4.75%.
Very good. Excellent. Okay, so that comes to 83,126. 125, sorry. 83,125. Okay. Okay, the annual net revenue, how do we get that?
Subtract the gross interest from the funding costs.
So we subtract the funding cost from the gross
The
interest,
funding- Yeah,
or is the gross interest minus the funding cost? The 179,375 minus 83,125, that gives us 96,250.
Oh. Times, find it out.
Well, you can't do that. You can't do that yet because you got to get the margin first.
Right.
Okay. So the margin, what would be the margin? How do you arrive at the margin?
Subtract the interest rate.
interest rate from the cost of funds rate.
It's the other way around. You subtract the cost of funds, the smaller from the larger, right? The cost of funds rate from the interest rate, right? Or the difference between the two of them is 5.5. But if you the interest rate minus the cost of funds rate gives you the margin or spread. Okay, and that's 5.5%. Now, if you want to double check that 9625 is correct, then you'll say 1.75 million times 5.5%. And you're supposed to come up with 96,250. So that's another way of double checking it. Okay. Now we're charging them 1% on this facility. That comes to 70,500. We're given that information. And even if we want to give that information, we could work it out because we know what the loan amount is. We know what the charge on it is. So 1% of 1.75 is 70,500. So our annualized projections are see, yeah. So for gross interest and costing funds, we just simply bring them down to our totals. So it's 179,375 for gross interest, funding costs 83,125 for our total annual net revenue. How do we get that again?
96,250.
Okay, so we get 113,750. Okay, very good. Okay, let's look at another one. Okay. So this will be a third one we're looking at. So this customer is borrowing 195,000 at 10.25%. What is the gross interest? 199,875. Okay. And we got that by multiplying 1.95 million by 10.25. Correct? Okay. Our cost of funds rate is 4.75. So what are our funding costs? 92,625. And how do we get that? Okay, so 1.95 times 4.75 gives us 92,625. Okay, now our annual net revenue. The gross interest minus the funding costs, and that gives us 107,250. What is our margin or spread?
Interest rate subtracted from the cost of funding.
The other way around. Remember, you subtract the smaller from the right. Okay, so it's the interest rate minus the cost of funds rate, or another way of saying it, the cost of funds rate subtracted from the interest rate, and that gives us what? So 10.25 minus 4.75 gives us 5.5. Okay, again, we're charging 1% on this facility. 1% of 195 1.95 million is 19,500. Okay. So our annualized net revenue on this is what? 126,750. Okay, great. All right. So that's pretty much that for margin. So purpose. Okay. So for purpose, is it legal? Is it sound? Is it worthwhile? So for individuals, purchase an asset, not speculative. Businesses, that's page 36 for working capital or fixed assets, plant, machinery, premises. We did a purpose term relationship. You won't have to do that in or come across that in a exam question, the bottom section of point number 2. Okay, so that takes us to amount. Okay, and some questions. Actual sales, what the amount is? It too much or too little? Is it realistic? Is the borrower making a contribution? Okay, the borrower's contribution is like their down payment or equity, whatever. What do they have skin in the game? Okay, so the individual apart from DSRs, lenders may use a multiplier of income. Okay, the individual and the business, those points 3 and 4, we don't probably gonna be hurt your head over that. Repayment term, which includes the term and the payment amount. So the term is consistent with the purpose and security pledged. The payment it involves the actual payment amount. What is the actual payment amount? Okay. The term is consistent with the purpose for the security pledge. 3, the source, is it clearly identified? And then NBB, note well, sometimes of lending have disciplined repayment programs, while others do not. So we see here that personal loans or consumer loans, mortgage loans or real estate loans, and business loans have repayment programs because you're given a stated monthly amount. Whereas overdrafts and credit cards is either a minimum payment or the overdraft fluctuates as credits flow through the account. Okay, and with the overdraft, it should go into credit at least once a month, because the whole point is it's to fill in a gap. So a gap between a bill being due and the person getting paid. Okay, so once the person get paid, the overdraft should be covered and it should go back into credit. Okay, then finally it was insurance. Okay, which is collateral, the collateral security pledged. There are 4 qualities of good collateral. What are they? Oh, you got it memorized, man. Oh, hot dog.
The value,
Okay.
stable value.
Yes. Okay. So 4 qualities of good collateral security. Easy to acquire, good title, easy to value, have stable value, easy to realize if necessary. What does it mean, easy to realize? What do you mean by that?
Easy to be converted.
Okay, is it easily to be converted? But more specifically, if you're a bank and you're trying to liquidate an asset, when it comes time for collection, okay, if you can't collect the debt, what it means is, how quickly we could get the money for this to pay off the debt. Okay, so when you're talking about easy to realize, that's what they're talking about, that process. How quickly can we get money out of this? All right. So that does it for Campari, and then we looked at the credit C's method, and we said the credit C's consisted of character, capacity or capability, cash flow, capital, contribution, collateral, conditions, credit history, connections, common sense. And then what we did was we segmented them to say what were assessment and what were structuring items. So character, capacity, cash flow, credit history, connections, common sense, are all assessment when when you're assessing a loan, and when you're structuring the loan, you're looking at the middle three, capital, collateral, and conditions. So we can see that's, for example, credit history was a part of character. Remember when we were doing character under compari, but credit C's puts it separately. Okay, and then of course what they do is they expand capacity capability, and they show for individual, and then they say cash flow, which is for the business. Okay, so normally when you're dealing with the individual, it's a capacity or ability. When you're dealing with businesses, it's cash flow. Okay, so yeah, so and so when I said some people have 3 ways of doing this, 10 ways of doing that, it's and when you boil down, you could get 5 or less, possibly 3 key things in there where everything else falls into it. All right. So then we look at the big 3, or the 3 key factors. Okay, that was I'm gonna get the page on there. Anyway, character, ability, capacity, insurance, collateral. Okay, and we looked at that should be right, page about 30 something, 38. Thank you very much. Yeah, page 38. The 3 key factors, or I call it the big 3. So characters in blue: employment history, credit history, net worth. The what you call it? Ability or capacity is concerned with debt servicing and TDSRs, income confirmations, and the third one is collateral security. In particular, the 4 qualities of good collateral security. All righty. Now we have a chart there. Let's complete the chart. What goes under 1 for compari? So, and what is the equivalent of credit C's? Also character.
Yeah.
And what is the main thought?
Will
Will
pay.
pay. Okay. For number 2, under compari, ability, under credit C's. Okay, capacity or capability. And the main thought, can pay. Okay, that is they have the financial resources to pay. They can pay. And then thirdly, insurance. Okay, collateral under credit C's, and the main thought. Okay, if they won't or can't pay. Okay. And remember I told you about the 2 different types, 2 basic types. You have those who give you a bunch of excuses. The won't pays, give you a bunch of excuses, or they terrorists. Okay. All righty, so let's look at to lend or not to lend. If they have good character, good capacity, good collateral, do we lend to them? What about if we have good character and capacity, but no collateral? Yes, because we do unsecured lending. Most of the time under taking salary deduction. Okay. What if they have good character, good collateral, but capacity is weak? No, maybe. Okay. So why maybe? No, because remember now, just because they have collateral, they have collateral, because remember, only cash pays loans. Ability only cash pays loans. So if they don't have the cash flow, why lend to them? What was the scenario I used? That sometimes they may have a collateral, and it deals with collateral. They may have the collateral that could be done. What could be done with it? Not liquidated, but used to generate income. Okay, remember I told the story about the man who had the store, and then he had two properties. Both was left by his grandfather or somebody. Okay, and then his mother lived with him, and so you might want to say, okay, well, we could lend you $5,000 to put stock in the store. The mother runs the store, okay, because she retired, she ain't doing nothing, and it generates income. Okay, so it gives him more income. So he had a collateral, but the collateral wasn't being utilized or properly utilized. Okay, and so we looked at it and we say, listen, this over the hill, a lot of mom and pop shops, they do fairly well, or it might have been like it could have been like a little fast food restaurant or whatever. Maybe the mother's good with cooking, and so the mommy was selling chicken in the bag and that type of thing, right? Or tuck shop. Okay, so chicken in the bag and chips and that sort of stuff, because there may be several schools in the area, junior and primary and secondary schools, right? So okay, so now what if they have capacity and collateral, but they have no character? No. Okay, alrighty. So somehow the no got missed in 3. So it's yes, no / maybe, and no. Definitely no for number 4. Chapter 8, the role of loan security. Okay, all forms or types of credit represent risks to the lender. No risk can be entirely avoided. And 2 important points here. Lenders seek to minimize impact of inherent risk and to justify their lending decision by obtaining some form of safeguard that is collateral security. Okay, security taken will act as secondary backup source of repayment if the borrower is either unwilling or unable to repay. Okay, so security taken will act as a secondary or backup source of repayment if the borrower is either unwilling or unable to repay. Okay, then there were lending values, lending value ratios. Okay, we looked at the LPV or LPC. Okay, and then of course we looked at real estate appraisals, 3 types. And what are they? The 3 types of appraisals. Sorry, what is the first one again? The sales comparison approach. Cost approach or replacement value approach. And then thirdly,
Income approach.
Income capitalization approach or income approach. Okay. And then just briefly, the sales comparison approach, the cost replacement approach, which of course is the most often used in the Bahamas. The income capitalization approach used primarily for income producing properties. Although because a lot of residential properties are being also used for Airbnbs, if they're numbered that in a certain area that is residential, you may find that the appraiser may include the income capitalization approach if that house was to be turned into Airbnb. Okay, so that's a more recent development in the last few years. Okay, normally the appraiser will use the average of the 3 approaches. Okay, and there should be some similarity between the 3 of them. Then we looked at the risks associated with overbuilding, and we said to the bank or the lender, to the owner or borrower, if the bank or lender has to foreclose, it may be difficult to dispose of the property because it'll be priced too high. To the owner borrower, if they decide to sell, in all likelihood, they will not be able to recoup the full value or the cost of the property or what they put into it. And if they're seeking financing from the lender, and the lender does lend to them, then we find that they have to put a larger contribution or some additional security. Okay, so chapter 9, we looked at various documents used. The promissory note, debenture, legal mortgage, chattel mortgage, pledge, hypothecation, lien, authority to hold. We looked at documents and their storage, management, and control. And we looked at monitoring and controlling accounts and some of the reports. So with the pledge and hypothecation, as I said earlier, there was a correction from fixed assets to liquid assets. So a pledge or hypothecation or lien or authority to hold document is for liquid assets, and liquid assets are, your savings accounts, current accounts, term deposits, okay? Or some people call them certificates of deposits or fixed deposits. But CDs, TDs, FDs, they're all the monthly or quarterly or yearly fixed or time deposits, okay? So those are liquid assets, the pledge or hypothecation, right? So we said that credit files are security files. The credit file is your daily working file. The security file is normally put in under dual control. Okay, that is 2 persons, because that's forms the basis of the bank's assets. Okay, then we're given some reasons for monitoring and control. Okay, it says the ongoing monitoring and control of accounts helps to identify, prevent, and minimize potential risk and losses that might occur due to a material adverse change in the affairs of the borrower. Effective monitoring and controlling of accounts serve to improve the quality of the loan portfolio. Thirdly, the monitoring of accounts also helps to identify whether companies are performing financially well. Okay, then we move to chapter 11, where we talked about origination delinquency. Okay, so we said the origination of problem, is it internal or external? If it's internal, what we said we should do if it's internal? Resolve it quickly. Okay, if it's external, determine whether the problem is short-term or long-term. That is, whether it's temporary or permanent. Okay. Now, with regard to temporary, remember going back to the chart where we had, will pay, can pay, won't or cannot pay. There are 2 types of borrowing customers: the cannot pay and the will not pay. Okay, so when they cannot pay, it is either temporary, as we said, or permanent. If it's temporary, we explore, work out solutions. If it's permanent and it's a good customer, we try to see what we could do. But it is what it is. If we can't do nothing but call in our security or realize our security, then we do that. Okay, they will not pay. If they've shown you over repeatedly, particularly excuses and the terrorists, don't waste your time. Proceed. As long as you follow the protocols and procedures according to your bank's manual or guidelines, don't waste time. Proceed to collect your debt. Okay, if that means going through the courts, you go through the courts. Okay, then we look at timelines for action, and we said the most important was in this first category here, the first 5 days. So the first 5 days, we want to determine if the problem is either internal or external, and again, resolve quickly if internal. If it's externally, you call the customer. And delinquency must be called within the first 5 days to avoid further deterioration. Okay, so you really need to, within that first 5 days, take your action. If you have to go through the courts, you go to the magistrate's court for amounts up to 5,000. But just bear in mind that if the judge rules against you, you do not have the ability to appeal to the Court of Appeal. However, if you go to the Supreme Court for any amounts 5,000 and over, you can appeal to the Court of Appeal. Okay, so any matters of a monetary nature, or what they call it pecuniary nature, in the magistrate's court, you cannot go to the Court of Appeal. There's only indictable offenses. So indictable offenses are assault, rape, murder, theft, those kind of things. Okay. They don't have to deal with money. It deals with things and people, crimes against people and things. Okay. And if the Supreme Court, doesn't, you don't like the decision that they made, again, you can appeal to the Court of Appeal. If you don't like the Court of Appeals decision, you can go all the way to the Privy Council, which is located in the UK, London. Okay. Considering costs, the bank has to make a decision, and those based on opportunity costs, legal and administrative costs, collateral cost considerations, and market reputation costs. Okay. We also talked about judgments. We said a judgment is issued by the courts against the defendant for value of the matter heard by the court. And everyone should have gotten an updated chapter on this. I sent it by email. Okay. Chapter 9. Okay, so refer to the print and refer to the updated versions. Okay. And then of course outlawry dates or statute bar dates are the points in time when the lender can no longer pursue action to recover certain debts. So it's important that we pay attention to those deadlines so that in order to prevent a debt from becoming uncollectible. Now, the expiry dates for outlawry, the outlawry statute bar dates are as follows. For loans and overdrafts, it's 6 years from the date of the last payment. For mortgages, 12 years after the date of last payment. Where there's an actual judgment concerning a mortgage, it's statute barred after 6 years of the date of the judgment. Okay, and the client can settle that anytime, even before the 6 years. 6 years is up. Okay, and if the bank decides on a lesser amount, it has to be settled. So you can't say, well, I got 8,000 out of 10,000, and I could go after them for the other 2,000. No, if you agree to accept 8,000, 8,000 is what you're entitled to. So now you must mark the account settled. The other two you've decided to write off. Okay. Any questions? Wow. I can speed up a little bit. Okay. So some typical exam questions. Let's look at so all of the following are true. This is like multiple choice. Okay. So we can do a few multiple choice. First, then we can look at some true and false. Typical exam questions. All of the following are true about reserve requirements, except which one?
A.
A. Okay. Banks can lend to clients against secondary reserves, but not against primary reserves. Remember, you can't lend against any reserves. It's reserved. Okay, good. Okay. Which of the following is not true? Pay attention to the words.
Is it A?
A. Okay. Total debt service ratio is the amount of your monthly housing payment obligation. What is the amount of your what ratio is the monthly housing payment obligation? Which ratio? It isn't TDS. It is what? GDSR. Okay, good. Okay. All right. Great stuff. So total debt service ratio. Okay, another one. When assessing credit, a good lender will sorry? F?
F.
Okay, someone saying F?
Yes.
Okay.
F, yes.
F, okay, yes. F is correct. A, C, and D only. Because you're not gonna focus solely on the collateral being offered. Okay. When considering compari, the following is or are true about R, that is repayment.
That would be for sure.
Okay, what about, okay, that the term is consistent with the purpose and security pledged. That's correct? Okay. Someone said B, that the repayment source is clearly identified. Okay, A, B, okay. C, that fees are in line with the product being granted. No?
You got E.
Going with E,
A and
okay.
B.
C and D are concerned with what? Margin,
Margin, yes.
okay? So you're talking about fees in line with the product being granted. Okay, that's margin, because remember now, interest rate and fees. Okay, that interest rate is plus price to reflect the risk. Okay, so the answer is E, A and B only. All right. I got 5 minutes. Okay, let's see if I can work a miracle here. All? Okay, so in the house, you're saying all? Okay, all of the above. Okay, good stuff. Okay. Here's one more. Which of the following is true about judgments? D, none of the above. Okay. Okay, none of the above. All right. Okay, so some exam tips, and then I'll look at one or two true or false. Okay. So read all the questions carefully. Okay. Look out for words such as not and except. Also look out for keywords or phrases. And I'm going to give some examples of some of these in a few minutes. If you have difficulty with a question, move on to another one and then come back. Okay? So you might probably want to just put a little star or a little inverted arrow, whatever, to remind you that when you're going back, because at the end of the exam, it's going to say, please check to make sure that you've properly answered or fully answered or something to that effect. Okay? So go back. Also, if you get stumped, sometimes going to another question or another section, going through it, yes, okay, it triggers something, okay. So then you go back and say, oh, wait, I saw that. So that's why it's good to note. Just put a little dot, in pencil or whatever. Make sure everything close to where it may be indicated that you're answering, right? but so don't put it by the letter. Put it by the number, right? Like the answer by the number to remind you. Okay. And if you have a pencil, it's good because you can erase it. But even if you have a pen and you put it in a pen, that's not gonna. I'm not gonna pay attention to that. I'm paying attention to the answers. Okay. But I'll see where you where it did stump you, but it wouldn't matter. Okay. And make sure you answer all questions, even if you have to guess. Okay. It's either right or wrong. Okay. 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 So here is here are some questions. So, for example, a mortgage loan is an example of a lending facility that does not have a disciplined repayment plan, which is false, versus a mortgage loan is an example of a lending facility that has a disciplined repayment plan. Okay, so remember I said watch out for the words not and accept. Okay, so watch it when you're being asked. Okay, and then I also said watch out for certain phrases. Okay, so cash flow refers to a client's pool of assets less their liabilities. Cash flow is those unencumbered. That's false. It's actually net worth refers to a client's pool of assets, right? Okay. Here's another one similar. The loan to value ratio expresses the dollar value amount you own in a piece of property, which is false. There's actually equity that expresses. And so sometimes you, if you look at, it says loan to value ratio expresses the dollar value amount. Okay, so you can, okay, so as soon as you see the word ratio, it's supposed to be percent. Okay, so all right. So equity actually expresses the dollar value amount you own in a piece of real estate. Okay. Alrighty. With respect to DSRs, when calculating the monthly contribution of a credit card, we use a percentage of the outstanding credit card balance, usually 3 to 5%. Is actually limit. Okay. So if it says balance is false, again, pay attention to words, phrases. Okay.
Just say you were going to trick questions on it. Okay. So what was that? So you already overnight out.
Okay, so that's the end of the review. Okay, the final exam, some notes here. It's Thursday, September the 7th, 8:30 p.m. here for those in New Providence at BIFS. And for the student in Freeport, Ms. Dean will direct you to the testing center there. Here is what your exam is going to look like. You have 2.5 hours to do it. If you need that time, historically, a lot of people finish within 2 hours or less. Okay, but if you need 3 hours, I instruct the institute to give you the extra half hour. Because I know not everyone is, particularly with the calculations and stuff, so not everyone is as fast as someone else. So because it should be completed within the class frame time. The class is 6 to 9, but we give 10 minutes for each hour. Okay, so calculators, standalone, not cell phone. Now, whether or not the institute is going to enforce that. Okay, all right, So so note well, place the answers on the exam scripts. Okay, so you're gonna have 25 pages. Okay, so put it on. This is actual draft final exam right here, right now. Okay, so true, false, 40 questions, multiple choice, 40 questions, fill in the blanks, 23 questions, case study, 28, one question, 28 points. Okay, so topics covered. Well, I went through it, but just to rehash, chapters 1 to 8, except pages 49 to 51, chapter 9 and chapter 11. Questions not on the exam. On the chapter 1, review question number 7. That's the one with calculating the reserve requirements again. Okay, you won't have that kind of question. Chapter 2, the review questions number 2 and 3, those long answers. You're gonna have those long answers. The only long answers you will really have to deal with is when you're doing the case study and you're doing the capacity, blah blah blah. Okay. Okay. Chapter 8, review question number 7, which is page 49 to 51 that we did not cover. So you won't have a review question similar to question 7. Your key resources, end of chapter review questions, homework and class assignments, the mock midterm exam, which was homework, various case studies. We did 3 in entirety. We did Brown, but the 2 that Brown is kind of like a combination of the roles, which is the key one that we looked at, and the Balfours. So look at those 2 that we looked at tonight. You'll get a kind of condensed version of this PowerPoint presentation tonight. Okay, but look at the various 2 case studies. Alrighty, you will be. I decided to give the formula equations. Okay, so instead of being finished in 2 hours, you also be finished in 1.5 hours, right? Because you'll have the formulas now, right? Okay, so you'll be given these formula. Okay, so you don't have to, because sometimes you know, you may be having a bad day, and the final exam, there's a lot riding on the final exam. And these things are available to you at work, either electronically or whatnot. So I decided, so this will be the first time. Maybe I'm getting soft in my old age. I don't know. Okay. Are there any questions before we end the class? Okay, no, they do have any questions, shoot me an email. Okay. All righty. So here ends the summer session of 2022. 2023, sorry. It did say 2023, right? Okay.
Yes.
That's fatigue setting in. Okay. So I'm all the best in your exam. Okay.
Thank you.
Also, you get
Thank
the
you.
results back. Normally, when I collect them that night or I collect them the following morning, I finish grading them. There are only 8 of you. I normally grade them the same day and turn them in the same day. They're sorry? Oh no! I can't. No. I gotta. I don't get paid. I only get paid $1 for doing this. I only get paid $10. I say I only get paid $1 for doing this. I don't get paid $10. So I gotta do it quickly. You know what I'm saying? No, I just kidding. But when you have stuff to do, I just want to get it done. Plus, I know that y'all this session was put back about a week, right? So you're already a week behind. Some people need this to graduate, so I try to get out as quickly as possible. The papers are cross graded or cross modulated, so it depends on who whoever that individual is. But so I'd say I get it Thursday, Friday they would have it, unless something goes wrong, then I'll do it over the weekend. So Monday definitely. Okay, so yep. Okay.
Based on all the homework and stuff we did